Good morning, Cochise County. Michael Zehr here with a special guest Friday interview. Uh, Sitting in with us today is Lance Von Prum, if I pronounced it right. Lance?
Yes.
Great, okay. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We appreciate it so much having you here.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right. I would like to remind our viewers that hopefully if you're watching this live, if you have any questions for Lance or myself, please type it down in the comment section. I keep forgetting to tell you that, and then we're in the middle of the interview, and then I bring that up, and I feel like I'm being rude, and I don't like to be rude, so I've said that last week. So any questions for either Lance or myself, again, put it down in the comment section, and we'll be happy to address those questions for you. So, good morning, sir. Thank you again for joining us. Let's get started with what branch of the military were you in?
U.S. Army.
U.S. Army. Okay, and what year did you, before we get to what year did you enter, where were you born, where was home? Tell us a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Well, I was born in Devil's Lake, North Dakota. And thank goodness my parents saved me by moving out west when I was 3.5. We moved to Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
Then to Vancouver, Washington, where I grew up most of my young adult life. And then joined the military in 1967.
And where were you at that time? Were you still in Portland?
Vancouver, Washington,
Vancouver,
right across
Washington?
the river.
Okay.
So they sent me to basic training up at Fort Lewis, Washington.
Ah, not too far to go then, huh?
No. But then they sent me to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. I enlisted and chose, my MOS was M26M. Anyway, I was a radio wave propagation specialist. So at Fort Monmouth, I got 26 weeks of electronics training and then was assigned to Fort Huachuca.
What does the job of a 26, Mike, is that what you said?
26M20.
Yeah, what does that job entail? I mean, like, what would some of the duties be for that?
We were trained on this one machine called the Granger. It would fill this room.
Really?
Yes. Well, electronics back then, we're still using vacuum tubes. We were just transitioning into the transistor age.
Okay.
So this machine would send out various frequencies and bounce them off the ionosphere, and then determine which frequency at that particular time would work best. And then they'd dial the radios to that frequency and start communicating. So the machine was just to find the right spot on the ionosphere and the right frequency to use to communicate.
And how far were they able to communicate?
Well, if you bounce off the ionosphere, about a third of the way around the world.
Wow. And that was all the way back in 67, huh?
Yeah.
Kind of like how, ham radios might work, or CB radios in a way, or no? Because I know that you could skip halfway across the...
It's the same thing. You're bouncing off the ionosphere.
Yeah, that's what I meant as far as, yeah. So after you go to New Jersey, and you're there for AIT, and you complete your AIT, where was your first duty station?
Fort Huachuca.
Right here at good old Fort We Got You, and you ain't going nowhere. And you got here in what year?
1970.
1970.
January, I think.
Okay. And how long were you here for?
Until I got out of the Army. From Fort Huachuca, I would be sent along with a bunch of other guys on different TDY assignments.
Okay.
So what I was trained in, like most of you guys out there, we never ended up doing exactly what we were trained for. We did something similar. So I was, most of our TDY assignments were installing different kinds of equipment.
And was a lot of your TDY overseas, or was it here in the States, or a combination of both?
It was a combination of both.
Okay.
I went on several unremarkable things in the United States, but the one assignment that we all wanted was a 6-month tour in Iran.
Really?
We were installing radios for their military because they were still using Morse code.
Okay.
And the radios we were installing were just little things about that big. And actually, I only ever saw one. we had been doing these recurring tours in Iran for at least 2 years, and nobody ever installed a radio.
Wow.
In hindsight, I think it was actually a cover-up for just spying on the Shah, spying on the Iranian military.
Well, I was going to say, I can't ever remember anything good coming out of Iran. So
At that
I was
time,
surprised
it was very peaceful.
Uh-huh.
And a beautiful country. The people were fantastic. The
That's great to
country,
hear.
although mostly desert, had its own beauty. Long history.
Well, and I think, and I'm guilty of this myself, is that you can't condemn a country citizens because of what their government does. It's so I understand what you're saying about Iran being peaceful back in that day. So
Yeah, the Iranian people loved the Shah. He was very popular,
okay,
except with a small group. He had his enemies, and you may have heard of the Savak, which was just like the Nazis in World War II. It was the Shah's secret police, and they were pretty strict.
okay,
People disappeared, but for 95% of the country, they loved the Shah, and he was bringing that country into the 20th century. Had things not played out like they did, and he died from cancer, I think he would have eventually made Iran a free country.
wow, that's amazing.
But then we all know that Khomeini came back in, and Iran went back to the 3rd century.
When you're doing your TDY service, how many different places have you been to? Just all over the place then? Because you mentioned Iran.
One assignment was to Arlington, Texas, to install one of the very first computers on the internet. And again, this computer was the size of this room. I mean, each component of the printer was like a refrigerator freezer. We had a paper tape reader, a paper tape punch, card reader, card punch, printer, and then I don't know. Everything was controlled through this last machine, and I'd never seen anything like it.
Well, for those that can't see our studios in here, it's about, I don't know, what would you say, 12 by 12 or so?
Yeah, the room
Still
that this
pretty good
computer was
size.
in was air conditioned because everything was sensitive to heat, and we were in the middle of Texas. So we liked working in this room that was 72 degrees when it was 95 outside.
Right.
But because I didn't know anything about computers, just electronics, there were 2 guys in our group. I think there were 6 of us. The rest of us went down to I didn't mention earlier, we were sent to the Bell helicopter plant in Arlington. So the 2 guys
Okay.
the computer was already installed. All they had to do was fire it up. The other 4 of us were sent down to the flight line. So every time a Huey popped off the end of an assembly line, the assembly line there, a military test pilot would go out and make sure it didn't fall apart before he flew it over to Fort Hood and delivered it to the Army. And so we'd jump on board, and these test pilots would get us helicopter rated. We all had our pilot's license before we enlisted, and so
Okay.
I was already a pilot. So all I had to do was learn the difference between an airplane and a helicopter.
Did you get to fly military aircraft then?
Oh, yeah.
Yourself, or?
It's a very long story.
Okay. Well, share it with us.
Well, I tell these stories to my friends over the years, and they say, "You need to write a book. You need to write this down."
Right.
So I finally did.
You finally did.
The book is called "I Died, But I Got Better," because I was nearly killed or faced death a dozen times. I drove a Mini Cooper off a 100-foot cliff after hitting a deer. It went nose down and hit a rock the size of a 4-bedroom house. I came out of that with a bump on my head and a sore shoulder. I
Wow.
don't know why. I had a seatbelt on.
God's looking out after you.
But then there were 11 other experiences that my first one was I was nearly murdered. Uh, in Iran, we were held up by a Bedouin camel train.
And what's that? I've never been to Iran. I've never even been into the Middle East or anything. So,
Well, I was in Iran for 6 months, and for the first few months, we did nothing because there were no radios to install.
right.
We only had to show up at work 1 hour every Friday for roll call and to get paid. The rest of the time, we had an apartment. There were, I think, 8 of us, and so we were in 4 different apartments, and it was like a vacation. We'd sleep in, we'd get up, go have breakfast somewhere, and then we loved to go to the bazaar.
Okay.
The bazaar was in the center of the city. It was surrounded by these adobe walls, maybe 30 feet high. And it was ancient. I don't know how old that was, but it was so much fun to go inside and get lost.
A lot of history, huh?
A lot of history. We'd go through these corridors and tunnels, and, of course, there were buildings built on top of buildings inside of this and little tunnels. And so our adventure was to go in and try to get lost and then find our way out. And such an immersion into the culture. Iran was a pretty liberal country then. I mean, the women wore miniskirts. The rest of the Middle East, women wore, the full length burqa, they call
Burqa,
it.
right.
In Iran, they call it a chador.
A what?
A chador.
Chador?
And
Okay.
Very few women wore those, especially the younger women. They would just either have a little piece of lace over their head, like a little veil, not always over their face, and you could see right through it,
Okay.
or nothing at all. And miniskirts, I mean short miniskirts. So Iran was pretty progressive back in 1970. But in the bazaar, you could, deep into the bazaar, we could see more conservative culture. The women that did have the full length chadors and wouldn't be out in public without a male relative.
Okay. Do you know what some of the purpose for wearing the I don't want to call them outfits because that's their custom wear, but what are some of the traditions and why they wore those type of that clothing?
What I understand is that the women were covered to not instill sexual desires in men.
Oh, okay. All right.
So everything was covered.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, that goes back to the Bible days. I mean, that they talked about that in the Bible a lot. Now, so you're in Iran, and I would love to hear some more of these fascinating stories. It just sounds like there's so much more you could tell us about what was going on in there. Come on.
Well, one of my adventures was they sent me and an interpreter. There was a sergeant in charge and a driver in a Russian Jeep.
A Russian Jeep.
Through the southern 2/3 of the country.
Okay.
Yeah, the Shah was brilliant in playing the Russians off the Americans. He let the Russians supply him with tanks, jeeps, and ground forces, and we gave the Shah an air force.
Wow.
So they were flying around in American airplanes and driving around in Russian vehicles. So the purpose of this trip was to go to all the places where radios were going to be installed and to ensure that there was a line of sight between that installation and the next one, because these radios were line of sight. And
Okay.
so we went to...
In other words, we weren't going to give them our latest, newest technology.
No.
Right.
No. But there were probably a dozen different places we went to, different cities throughout the southern end of the country. And what an adventure that was. But the most exciting part was we were on the eastern side of the country near at the Afghanistan border, headed north to, I think it was Zehr. It was a city. 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 It was a city I can't remember the city without looking at a map. But ahead in the distance, we saw a camel train headed our way. About just 5 or 6 camels, I think. And the interpreter told the sergeant in charge that we would have to stop and tell these people what we were there for. It's their country, and they just feel like they own the place.
Right.
So the interpreter told the sergeant that we had to stop, and he said, "No, we're in a jeep. We don't have time for this." He said, "No, we have to." Anyway, he finally talked the sergeant into stopping. We stopped about 100 yards before the camel train. The interpreter went up, and their head guy came out, and they sat and talked for what seemed like forever. It was 15 or 20 minutes before the interpreter waved us forward. And we immediately their custom was, we had to drink some tea. So out of nowhere, they whipped out this boiling hot tea.
Really?
And we drank that. And then they passed around this goat stomach full of, I think, camel milk or something. I don't know. Anyway, room temperature, about
And is it
100
a tradition
degrees.
if you pass that it's offensive to them or anything?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So we had to have a sip out of this without puking. We all managed to choke it down. When they finally allowed us to leave, we got back in the jeep and we said, "What was the deal? What took so long?" And the interpreter said, "I just spent 20 minutes trying to talk them out of not killing you."
What?
Because why not? From their point of view, we had all kinds of valuable shit.
Right.
It's a big desert out there, and so
They had weapons with them at the time, or yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I only saw one long gun, and it was a wheel lock. If you're, I don't know how familiar you guys are with ancient armament, but a wheel lock is a long gun. It's a cast iron barrel, and this predated the flintlock. It was just a smoking rope on a wheel the wheel would go down into the powder like a flintlock, and then from there it would ignite the powder inside and shoot a ball. But they made these. They were able to make these in their little villages out in the desert.
Wow.
And so this thing was really crude. I mean, really crude. But anyway, they had a weapon, and we were glad to get away.
Well, Kathy mentions here, she said, held up by a Bedouin. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Bedouin camel train. That's got to be a unique story for Americans. I mean, how many United States citizens, raise your hand, have been over there and been stopped by a camel train? I'm sure there's very few of us.
There were very few Americans in Iran at that time. Very few. There were the 12 of us in our group that were sent over on the 6-month TDY assignment. There was the American military guard that guarded the embassy, and that was about another 12 guys, and a half a dozen or a dozen Americans working for BP in the oil industry.
Okay. I did forget to ask you, what was your rank at that time?
Spec 4.
E4, Spec 4, okay.
Yeah.
I was interviewing about 3-4 weeks ago, 3 women Army Corps veterans, and they said the specialist E4 rank, they did away with that. I thought that was kind of interesting. They go with corporal. I don't think they... I'm trying to remember what it was now. Did they do away with all of the specialists except E4? That's what it was. I think they did away because it used to go up to like E7. I think specialist E7 or something like that. And I believe from what they told me, it went down to just E4 now. That's very interesting. These places that you went and set up this equipment, tested this equipment, what your job was doing, did you all go with the same team personnel each time you went, or was it with a different group of personnel? How did that work?
No, I went south, and my roommate, Mike, he went with a similar team to the north end of Iran and did the same thing I did, antenna site surveys, going to different outposts and seeing if the radio would work there, see if it truly was line of sight to the next radio installation.
Wow. And you were in active duty for how long?
3 years.
For 3 years. And after you were done, you ETS'd, was it here at Fort Huachuca?
Yes.
It was here at Fort Huachuca. And you liked it here so much you just decided to stay, huh?
No, I moved back home and spent some time in California. I lived in Texas a little bit.
All right.
But I moved here from Texas about 3 years ago because I remembered how much I enjoyed it here for a variety of reasons. And where I lived in Texas had become, a little city of Fredericksburg was starting to get gentrified. Things were becoming more expensive, more crowded. And I didn't have a lot anchoring me there, just a couple of friends. But I decided to give it a try. Came here I live in Bisbee.
Okay, I was going to ask that.
And haven't regretted it for a moment.
Well, the saying, I got here in 1977, and a saying that stuck with me was that old hippies never die, they just moved to Bisbee. I'm guessing you've heard that?
Yes, I have. I'm in the midst of researching on my next book that I want to write. And the working title is called Bisbee Land.
Oh, wow. Because what is your thought behind it? What is your?
I want to write the
theory?
Weird history of Bisbee.
All right.
You know, everybody knows that there's lots of haunted buildings in town, especially the Copper Queen. The normal mining history of Bisbee is pretty well known, but there are so many weird happenings that have gone down over the years that I want to document some of it. I would think it would be fascinating. What got me started on this was a friend of mine told me one story that is called the thumb that ran for mayor.
Okay.
And back in the 60s, everybody worked in the mine, and this one miner was on the ballot running for mayor. Well, unfortunately, there was an accident and he was blown up. And all they could find was a piece of his flannel shirt and his thumb. So it was called the thumb that ran for mayor. And he apparently won the race.
No.
So I don't know any more details than that, but I would like someone to come forward and let me know if they know any more details about this or any other weird story. Get a hold of me and we'll put you in the book.
And how would we be able to contact you? Obviously, Facebook, because that's how I met Lance. So if you do have Facebook, that's one way of being able to get in touch with them. How about like an email? They can reach out to you at?
My email is just my name. It's lance@vonproom.com or lance@planetbisbee.com. And I have a website, planetbisbee.com.
Awesome.
And on that site, I show a lot of my artwork, the watercolors I've done recently and in the past. And I don't know what else is there.
That was another thing I wanted to talk to you about, because Beth said to me, she goes, Mike, I've got this really interesting veteran that I would like you to interview, and he's an author and an artist, and I mean, wow, that's, not everybody has that talent. I wish I could. I can't even draw. I can't even draw a stick person. Okay, that's how bad I am. And I had went to Amazon.com, well, Amazon app or whatever, and I did find, I think you had like 3 books, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4 that were for sale on Amazon, but I didn't get to see all of your artwork.
Well, actually, I've written over 20 books.
Over 20 books?
Yes.
Okay.
both fiction and nonfiction,
All right.
and it's a real broad spectrum, a really broad spectrum, because I guess I've got a pretty weird mind and a weird sense of humor.
You know, I thought so because one of the books I looked at, forgive me because I don't know the title. I should have been more prepared for this one. When I looked at to go read the pages, they were all blank. So was that like a fill in your story or a sketchbook thing? What? Because it sounded humorous to me.
Uh, a while back, in trying to get my books, it's easy to publish a book on Amazon, but to get it to sell is a whole different deal. You have to jump through hoops. You have to do this. You have to do that, and then this, and it's very difficult. So as a result, I haven't made too many sales. But a while ago, what was real popular on Amazon, people were publishing what they call low content or no content books, and they're just blank books, like a notebook
Okay.
or a sketchbook. And so I did a few of those with funny titles.
Yeah, and I'd never heard of that. And when I looked at it, I thought, this guy is a genius because you're selling a book that you can basically, when you open to page one, it's blank and you can just kind of fill in anything that you want. You can
Yes.
kind of write your own, maybe.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
And this led to my next book I want to tell you about. It's called A Book for Young People.
You can hold a little bit closer here. Let me see if I can do it.
There you go.
There you go. A book for young people. How to figure out your life and become successful.
This came about from having coffee with a young man who wanted to meet me in Bisbee. This gentleman, I think, was 17 years old. And we talked about his life and his struggle as a teenager. And it inspired this book. So this book deals with the issues that most every young person experiences, confusion, uncertainty about the future, especially now, peer pressure, dealing with your parents and other adults, and on. How to deal with this. Another way I looked at this was a conversation I could have had with my dad, but never did. If we had this conversation and he would have just told me a couple things, my life would be different now. And I tell you, this book will change your life. If you are under 30 years old, check this book out.
Here, let me one more time. Also, it does have COVID-19 updated on it, so I'm guessing that means you went in and added some material that had to do with the pandemic.
More relevant to what's going on today.
If you guys can see it there.
Now, there's a million self-help books out there. And for the most part, they all have good information. What makes this book different from everyone else out there, and what will make this book work for you, is the blank book that you use with this. So in reading this, whenever you come across something you might otherwise underline or highlight with a yellow highlighter, you write in your blank book. And you write it in your own words, and then try to elaborate a little bit what you think about that thought. And this book is really short. It's only 25 pages of information. And you could read this in 2 hours, but take your time. And with this blank book, you'll write things down your blank book will become your notebook, and then your workbook, and then your guidebook for the rest of your life.
Right.
Because when you finish this book, you keep writing in your blank book. You keep reading. You find another book and read it and take notes. And you can, at some point, begin to plan for your future. You can set goals, achieve these goals. And if you start at a young age and you're motivated and you keep working at this, you can possibly retire by the time you're 40 years old. I guarantee it.
Well, you know, Lance, that was one of the books that I looked at on
Yeah.
Amazon, and it allows you to preview the first few pages. And as I'm reading that, I'm thinking we have veterans, young veterans that served in Afghanistan, Iraq, all these different combat zones that come home. And I think something like that would be so good for them because it would help them. When you're a soldier, you're told that you can't express your feelings. You kind of have to keep it to yourself, you know? And by writing this stuff down, I think it can become very, very therapeutic, you know? That's me. That's my thought process, anyways. But
yes, you're absolutely right. And this was the main reason I wanted to be here today, because this deals with depression and suicidal thoughts, how to deal with those thoughts and overcome them. If you're deep in depression or you feel suicidal, it's very difficult to dig your way out. But it's possible. It can be done. And it's not that difficult well, first I said it's difficult, and then I said it's not. It's possible if you work at it.
right, but you have to put the work in.
Yes, you have to. You can't do this alone. You need help, but there's so many agencies out there that will help you.
Yep.
You just have to look for them. And here at
The Warrior Healing Center does just that.
does exactly that. So
22 a day.
um,
You know, their Warrior Healing Center is constantly putting out information, trying to help prevent these suicides, our veteran suicides.
for you guys out there that don't know this Warrior Healing Center is amazing. I think Beth told me there's 55 agencies here. 55,
How about that? Yes, sir.
55 different agencies,
Yeah.
and every one of them want to help you. It's all free.
All free to the veteran, and it's like a networking service. Somebody may come in and they may have one issue, and they might find out, wow, they do that here too. They do. Oh, the list is way too long to mention, but they do like qigong. They have PTSD support groups. There's AA support groups. This is a great place. Thank you, Kathy and Tim and Beth and Dan and Kyle and all the numerous volunteers, Jeff, Terry, that I'm forgetting, because I know that they come in here, they don't get paid. They're here to help you. You know, they're here. They're here for you. This is a great place. I love this place. That's why I got involved. You know, I got to a point in my life I was like, I want to volunteer, but nothing speaks to me. Nothing really interested me. Somebody said, well, did you hear about the Warrior Healing Center? I said, no. And I went down there, and I got a little bit interested, but every time you come in, it's like the more you get vested in it, or invested, or whatever the right term is. But so they do a really great job here, and I'm very appreciative for everything that they do for our veterans here in the county, in Cochise County. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share with us? Did you have any artwork that you might have brought with you, or
No artwork.
No? What we can do is down in the comment section after the interview, I'd be happy to go in and list those websites that you gave me, so that those people that are watching it can go in
All right, sure.
and get that for you. But what about any kind of community activities or volunteering, or what do you do like in a typical day?
Well, I mostly focus on my artwork during the day because I have health issues and my lungs are not as healthy as I would like. So walking any distance is difficult. Much of any physical activity is difficult. So it's hard for me to get out and do much of anything as much as I would like to. So I am interested in exploring ways that I might be able to do that in my limited capacity. So,
well, that's what I do. I have quite a few of those same issues, and You just kind of have to find something that you can tailor around your. I don't like using the word disabled or disabilities. I know I'm with Disabled American Veterans too, but it's more like you don't focus on what you can't do. At least I don't. You try to find what you can do.
Yes, exactly.
Focus on that and try to excel on that a little bit. So, well, Lance, I can't thank you enough for coming in and sharing those stories. I would love to talk to you some more about Iran and some of that stuff that happened over there, because as the when the kidnapping, American kidnapping happened like that, I think that just kind of changed the whole landscape over there, if not before. I don't know. I wasn't over there. I'm just speaking as a citizen because I wasn't. It's kind of sad over there. But again, Lance, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
And I got a few announcements here to read real quick. If
before you do, Michael,
sure.
I should add these books and my other books are all available on Amazon.com.
And I can attest to that.
You can just go to the Amazon page and there's a search box at the top.
Yep.
Either type in my name, Lance Von Prum, or the title of the book, A Book for Young People. And because I'm not very well known on Amazon, it may not come up at the very top, but it'll probably be on the first page. But type in my name and you'll be able to see all the books.
Yep, I found them. So I can attest to the fact that it does work. All right. Again, thank you so much. We really appreciate you sharing your stories with us today. I wanted to share a couple other things real quick with everybody. This evening, yes, I'm finally remembering that it's Friday, they are doing a Senior Awareness Expo. And that is going to be at Mustang Mountain Cowboy Church at 100 West Oak Street in Whetstone. And it's going to be from 3 to 7 p.m. And Kathy and myself are going to be out there telling people what the Warrior Healing Center does. Some of the other organizations that will be out there are the Life Care Center from Sierra Vista, Eden Health, Huachuca City Police Department, Bayeda, if I'm saying that right, VICAP, the Whetstone Fire Department. There's just going to be a whole bunch of different organizations out there. And again, this is the Senior Awareness Expo today from 3 to 7 p.m. I hope that you can make it. I hope to get to see you there. If you are there, please come up and say hello to Kathy or myself. We would love meeting you if we haven't already. A few of the events that are going on here at the Warrior Healing Center for this week. Daily, Monday through Friday from 0900 to 1600 hours, we have the Arizona at Work. If you're a veteran and are in need of finding a job, come in, and Kevin and some of his fellow associates, because I don't remember their names, shame on me, would be more than happy to assist you. You do not have to be a veteran to get assistance, but here at the Warrior Healing Center, they do have career counseling for you. Also open to veterans, ad hoc. You can do your own live stream or podcast, kind of like what I'm doing today, kind of like what the Veterans Musing podcast in. So if any of the audio podcasting or video live streaming, if any of that stuff appeals to you and you'd like to do your own production, just contact us at vets@warriorhealingcenter.org to schedule it, or you can call the Warrior Healing Center, and the number is right there scrolling along the screen. Also, Friday, July 23rd. Oh, I just talked about that. That was the Senior Expo Awareness. So tomorrow at 07:30, we have the Velo Vets group ride. They're going to be meeting at Pueblo del Sol Country Club parking lot. That's at 7:30. Then we're also having this event right here really speaks to me. I was at the Disabled American Veterans yesterday, and a veteran came in and was struggling with alcohol. And that's all I'm going to say, because I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that. And I noticed here that they're starting a young AA potluck. Okay, so they're trying to get this group going here. So that's going to be this Saturday. It's going to start at 1,700 hours. It's going to go to 1,800 hours. and it's the Young AA Potluck Meeting, and it's going to be held here at the Warrior Healing Center Recreation Room. And something that we're starting up is we want to get socialization going. We want veterans coming in and interacting with other veterans. One of the ways that we can do this is we're going to be having, starting tomorrow is the first one, starting at 1,800 hours to 2,100 hours is the Warrior Healing Center movie night. They're going to be showing True Grit. That's the one with Jeff Bridges. They're going to be providing popcorn, and if you'd like to bring your own drink and snack, that would be encouraged. And on Sunday, the Bellow Vets has a 6-member team, begins their 1-week trek across Iowa. That's called the Rag Bra. I'm going to have to ask Kathy or Stu or somebody to tell me what the RAGBRA, what that stands for the acronyms there. Cheer them on with comments on the Bellow Vets Sierra Vista Facebook page, please. Also on Mondays at the Landmark Cafe, starting at 0900, the Marine Corps League Breakfast. They meet every Monday for coffee. They tell old war stories. If you're interested in attending, please call 520-456-5720 for information on that. Also on Monday, July 26th, starting at 1730, we have the 5 Treasures of Qigong here at the Warrior Healing Center. We on Tuesday, July 27th, from 0900 to 1200, and then 1300 to 1600 hours, we have the Healing with Art, the ancient art of flower pounding. Do you know what that is, by any chance? No? Okay. But Healing with Art, and since you're an artist, maybe that might be something that you might want to talk to Kathy or Beth about someday, coming in and teaching us people that aren't very good with painting. Teach us how to find our inner Picasso or something. Then we also have on Thursdays, July 29th, from 0930 to 1050. Here we have the Vietnam Veteran Recovery and Support Group, and that's Warrior Healing Center Telehealth. And we have Thursday, July 29th, 1100 to 1220, the Vet Center Veterans Women's Group Support and Processing and Skills. That's also here at the Warrior Healing Center Telehealth, and I'm going to have to ask Kathy more about the telehealth information, because if it's the way I understand it, it's kind of like the video health stuff that the VA does. And on Thursday, July 29th, from 1700 to 1830, we have the Flutes for Vets Circle. And another one that's, all of these are like really, really important. But one that kind of really gets to me is this July 29th, 1830 to 1930, Warrior Headspace and Timing. It's a PTSD support group. And I think that that's just, PTSD is just, it's a really hard thing to deal with, and it's something that you can't deal with on your own. And I think that being able to come in and do these support groups, I think it's a great thing. And lastly, I'm going to put down here the Monday, August 2nd, 1830 to 2000. It's going to be the Scottish American Military Society Post-81 monthly meeting, and that will be here at the Warrior Healing Center main conference room. Also, and it's not on the list, or if it's on here, I didn't see it, September 11th is going to be the 20th anniversary, sadly, of 9/11, and the Warrior Healing Center, along with Keepers of Liberty, are having a concert at the Veterans Memorial Park, and it's going to have Don McLean.
That's right.
Yeah, Larry Gatlin, a bunch of other different artists. I don't have the flyer here. I can't give you all the information, but just be on the lookout for the information, because that's going to be a great concert to attend. And if I understand it correctly, all proceeds come into the Warrior Healing Center to help them. And they are getting more and more sponsors coming on board. So I'll have more information on that hopefully next week. So that's it. That's everything I've got. Again, Lance, thank you, sir. Thank you for your service. Thank you for coming in, telling us your story, sharing us your books. And again, I will put all that information for your websites so people can check it out.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Our pleasure, sir. All right, everybody, have a great day and a great weekend.
So long.
Bye.